They thought the fairy tale ended when Edward climbed that fire escape. But love stories this powerful never truly fade. They just wait for the right time to begin again. The world remembers that final moment from Pretty Woman, Vivian smiling. Down, Edward conquering his fear of heights, the music swelling, and the credits rolling on a love that seemed unstoppable. For years, fans carried that ending in their hearts, imagining the life they built together. But time has a way of testing even the most magical romances. And now, decades later, the story is ready to take a bold new turn. Vivian Ward has lived a life far from the glittering streets of Rodeo Drive. After stepping away from the whirlwind of Edward's corporate world, she built her own career in design, using her sharp eye for beauty and her natural charm to create a name in the fashion industry. Her journey wasn't without struggles. Marriage to a man like Edward came with challenges, and the pressures of public life often cast long shadows over their private moments. Yet through it all, the spark between them endured. Now, after years of building their empire together, they're facing a crossroad. Neither expected an unexpected crisis that forces them to look back on who they were and question what they've become. Edward Lewis, once the untouchable tycoon who bought and sold companies with ease, has mellowed with age but remains sharp and calculating. His empire has shifted from aggressive takeovers to philanthropic ventures, inspired by Vivian's compassion. But behind his calm, controlled exterior, he carries regrets, missed moments, unspoken words, and the gnawing fear that somewhere along the way, they lost the simplicity that first drew them together. This tension simmers quietly until a letter arrives, an invitation to a charity gala in Beverly Hills that is more than just a social event. It's the very same hotel where they first met, the Regent Beverly Wilshire, now fully restored and steeped in their shared history. The return to Beverly Hills is anything but simple. Every street corner, every shop window, carries echoes of that first whirlwind week. Vivian finds herself flooded with memories, the thrill of transformation, the awkward charm of Edward trying to do romantic, the laughter they shared. In moments money couldn't buy, but in the same breath, she feels the distance time has placed between them. This trip isn't just about nostalgia, it's about facing whether their love is strong enough to survive the changes life has thrown their way. And as the limo rolls past those famous palm trees once more, both of them know this journey might just be the one that decides their future. Asterisk. The Beverly Wilshire has always been more than just a hotel to Vivian and Edward. It's the place where fate first brought them together. But walking through its gleaming lobby now feels different. The scent of polished wood and fresh lilies is the same, but the energy is sharper, heavier. Photographers crowd near the entrance, flashing bulbs as whispers follow them across the marble floor. Vivian smiles for the cameras, but it's a smile of habit, not warmth. Edward's hand rests lightly on her back, a gesture meant to be comforting, but it feels more like a subtle push forward. They're here as the picture-perfect couple, but underneath, God. Both are aware of the unspoken distance between them. The charity gala is a swirl of elegant diamond necklaces catching the light. Champagne, glasses clinking, and laughter echoing over the soft strains of a live-string quartet. Old acquaintances spot them instantly. Some approach with genuine warmth, recalling the early days when Vivian's unexpected charm disarmed even the most hardened business moguls. Others, however, wear smiles that hide their curiosity, eager to see if the fairy tale couple still holds up under scrutiny. Among the crowd is Clarissa Vaughn, a renowned real estate developer and Edward's former business rival. She greets him with a lingering handshake, her eyes flicking briefly toward Vivian in a way that's polite, but edged with condescension. Vivian senses the shift immediately. Clarissa represents a world Vivian has always brushed against but never fully belonged to, a world of silent power plays and coded conversations. As Edward and Clarissa fall into a discussion about a new luxury project in Monaco, Vivian drifts toward a display of photographs from the hotel's history. There, tucked among black and white shots of celebrities and dignitaries, is a framed image of her younger self, stepping out of the hotel in that iconic red gown. The memory hits her hard, not just the dress, but the feeling she had that night. the intoxicating mix of confidence and vulnerability. She wonders when that feeling faded. A voice interrupts her thoughts. Form. Familiar. An old friend from her fashion industry circles. He's charming, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and quick to make her laugh. Their conversation flows easily, touching on her recent work and an upcoming runway show in Paris. Edward notices from across the room. His expression doesn't change much, but there's a tightness in his jaw, the faintest sign of irritation. He excuses himself from Clarissa mid-sentence and makes his way over. The moment the three are together, the air shifts again. Edward's tone is polite but clipped as he shakes David's hand. Vivian feels caught between two currents, one pulling her back into the familiar safety of Edward's world, the other reminding her of the independence and excitement she's fought to keep alive. The tension isn't explosive, but it's there, humming beneath the surface, like the low note of a cello. As the evening wears on, the charity auction begins. A vintage pearl necklace, once worn by a Hollywood starlet, is brought out for bidding. The room buzzes with excitement, and Vivian feels a sudden impulse. She whispers something to Edward, and moments later his paddle is raised. The bids climb higher, and Edward wins without hesitation. When the necklace is placed in Vivian's hands, the crowd applauds. But she feels a pang. Was this a romantic gesture, or just another performance for the world to see? When the gala finally ends, the ride back to their suite is quiet. Outside the window, the lights of Beverly Hills blur past, but inside the car, it's a silence filled with unasked questions. Edward gazes straight ahead, lost in thought. Vivian turns to look at him, trying to read the man she once thought she knew completely. Something is shifting between them, and though neither speaks it aloud, both can feel that this trip is becoming much more than a reunion. It's a reckoning. The next morning. Sunlight spills through the tall windows of their suite, but the warmth in the room feels thin. Vivian wakes to the faint sound of Edward on the balcony, speaking quietly into his phone. His tone is measured, but there's an urgency there, like he's trying to keep something contained. She stays still, listening just long enough to catch fragments, words like deal, deadline, and not here. When he ends the call, he steps back inside, surprised to find her awake. His smile is quick, practiced, the kind that hides more than it reveals. They decide to spend the day revisiting familiar spots. But what should have been a romantic stroll turns into something different. On Rodeo Drive, Vivian notices Edward's gaze lingering on his watch more than on the window displays. At a small cafe where they once spent hours talking, the conversation now feels clipped, punctuated by the buzzing of Edward's phone. She tries to draw him out, mentioning old memories, teasing him about his once terrible taste in ties, but his answers are polite, distracted. That spark from years ago, the effortless back and forth, feels like it's slipping through her fingers, mid-afternoon. They return to the hotel, and Vivian decides to visit the spa alone. As she walks through the quiet hallway, she hears her name, soft, hesitant. It's Clarissa Vaughn. The other woman is alone, without her polished entourage, and her expression is unexpectedly sincere. Clarissa tells her she respects her, but warns that Edward is under immense pressure. She hints at a deal so high stakes it could put everything his company, his reputation on the line. Vivian listens, torn between brushing off Clarissa's words as manipulation and feeling the weight of what they might mean. Back in the suite, Edward is gone, a handwritten note left on the table. Business meeting, don't wait up. Vivian stares at the note for a long time, the elegance of his penmanship doing nothing to soften the sting. She dresses for the evening alone and heads down to the hotel lounge, ordering a glass of wine. The hum of quiet conversation surrounds her, and she can't help but scan the room for him. Instead, her eyes catch on a table in the corner Edward, in a dark suit, leaning in as he speaks to a man she doesn't recognize. It's not the meeting itself that unsettles her, the guarded expression on his face, the same one he War when she first met him, back when he kept his life locked behind iron gates. She doesn't approach him. Instead, she slips away, taking the elevator to the rooftop terrace. The night air is cool, carrying the faint sound of traffic below. Standing there, looking out over the city lights, she remembers the girl she once was, the one who dared to walk into a world that didn't seem built for her and made it her own. Somewhere along the way, she promised herself she'd never lose that boldness. But tonight she wonders if she's let it fade, letting love and routine dull the edges of who she used to be. When Edward returns to the sweet hours later, she's still awake, sitting in the armchair by the window. Their eyes meet, and for a moment, it's as if they're strangers again, each unsure of the other's next move. He starts to explain, but stops, as if the right words are just out of reach. Vivian doesn't push yet. The silence between them now is heavier than ever, filled with things neither is ready to say. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of a car horn drifts up from the street, a sharp reminder that life outside these walls is still moving. Inside, however, time feels suspended, the question of whether they can still find their way back to each other hanging in the air like a fragile thread. Asterisk, the following evening arrives with a tension so thick it seems to follow them into every room. The hotel's ballroom is hosting a private dinner for the gala's most influential guests. Edward insists they attend together. Vivian agrees, though part of her wonders if they're showing up for the benefit of others rather than themselves. She chooses a sleek black dress, simple, elegant, a deliberate contrast to the bright, head-turning gown she once wore. Edward notices, but says nothing, adjusting his cufflinks with that same quiet precision that has always both impressed and frustrated her. The dinner begins with polite conversation and clinking glasses, but beneath the glittering chandeliers, Vivian feels the walls closing in. She's seated between Edward and a Hollywood producer who dominates the table with loud stories. Edward, meanwhile, exchanges hushed words with a man on his other side, words she can't quite catch. But the tone is urgent. She knows that look. On his face, it's the look of a man calculating, negotiating, sealing something behind closed doors. Only now, it's happening in plain sight. When dessert is served, Vivian excuses herself, slipping out into one of the hotel's quieter corridors. She needs airspace away from the constant hum of networking and hidden agendas. She finds herself in front of the same elevator they once rode together on their first night, the one where Edward's calm collided with her spontaneity. The memory is bittersweet. Wonders if they've both changed so much that the magic that once filled moments like this can never be recaptured. A familiar voice breaks her thoughts. It's David Klein again, leaning casually against the wall as if he'd been waiting for her. They talk softly at first about trivial things, her design work, his latest project, but beneath it is a current of understanding. He tells her she hasn't lost her spark, no matter how much the world or Edward might make her feel otherwise. His words land in a place she didn't realize was so starved for affirmation. Before she can respond, Edward appears at the end of the hall. His eyes flick from David to Vivian, and something in his expression hardens. He strides over, his voice low but edged. He doesn't accuse her of anything outright, but the implication hangs there. Vivian, feeling the weight of days, maybe years of unsaid things, finally lets her frustration spill over. She tells him she's tired of being the silent figure on his arm, the one who smiles for photographs while the real conversations happen elsewhere. She reminds him of who she was when they met, a woman who challenged him, who made him laugh, who saw the man beneath the suit. Edward listens at first, then cuts in, his own voice rising. He tells her the deal he's working on isn't just business. It's a final safeguard for everything they've built together. If it fails, it could unravel their entire life. He admits he didn't tell her because he didn't want her to worry, but she sees now that his secrecy has done exactly that. The argument swells, words sharper than either intends, until both fall into a breathless silence. For a long moment, they simply look at each other, the noise of the hotel fading into the background. In Edward's eyes, she sees exhaustion, pride, and something else, fear. Not of losing the deal, but of losing her. And in herself, she feels the same fear mirrored back. Without a word, he reaches for her hand, and she lets him. It's not forgiveness, not yet, but it's a start. Later that night, they return to their suite. Edward places the pearl necklace from the gala into her hands once more. This time, he tells her it's not for show, it's because she's still the woman who changed his life. And he doesn't want to imagine a world without her in it. Vivian doesn't respond right away. Instead, she fastens the necklace herself, meeting his gaze in the mirror. The reflection looking back at them isn't perfect, but it's real. And maybe that's enough for now. As the city lights shimmer outside, they sit together in quiet understanding. The road ahead is still uncertain, but for the first time in days, the silence between them feels like peace rather than distance. Somewhere deep down, they both know their story isn't over. In fact, it might just be beginning again. Morning breaks over Beverly Hills with a golden light that seems to wash the night's tension away. But Vivian and Edward both know the peace is fragile. They eat breakfast on the balcony in near silence, the clink of silverware filling the space where conversation should be. Yet under that quiet, something has shifted neither of them is ready to let go. Vivian watches Edward carefully, noting the faint lines around his eyes. The way his shoulders still carry the weight of his deal. He looks back at her, and for the first time in days, his gaze lingers. Edward tells her the truth completely. This time, it's a deal he's been working on will protect not only his company, but the charity projects they've built together over the years. It's risky, and if it fails, they could lose much of what they have. But what scares him more is that in trying to shield her from that risk, he's pushed her away. Vivian listens without interrupting, letting the words settle. When he's done, she tells him that love isn't about keeping each other safe from every storm. It's about facing them together later that day. They walk hand in hand through the streets of Beverly Hills, retracing steps from decades ago. The air feels lighter now, every shop window and street corner carrying not just memories, but the promise of new ones. They stop outside the Regent Beverly Wilshire, and Edward surprises her by pulling out a small envelope. Inside is a pair of tickets, not to Paris, not to Monaco, but to a quiet coastal town, far from the spotlight. A place, he says, where they can breathe, talk, remember what's important before deciding what comes next. That evening, the gala's closing reception brings them back to the ballroom one last time. The chandeliers glow, the music swells. And for the first time since they arrived, Vivian feels truly present. Midway through the night, the band begins to play a slow, familiar song, the same one from their first night together. Without hesitation, Edward takes her hand and leads her to the dance floor. The crowd watches, whispers ripple through the room, but in that moment, there's only the two of them. Their steps are slower now, less about perfection and more about connection, but the feeling, the pull between them, is exactly the same as the song ends. Edward leans in, not for a grand speech, but for a simple truth whispered against her ear. We still have a story worth telling. Vivian smiles, not the practiced smile for cameras, but the one that belongs only to him. The applause around them fades into background noise as they walk off the floor, side by side, ready to face whatever comes next. Outside, the night air is cool, the city lights sparkling like a promise. They pause on the hotel steps, looking out at the street where it all began. This time there's no grand rescue, no dramatic climb, just a people choosing again to keep walking together. And as they disappear into the Beverly Hills night, it's clear that Pretty Woman 2 isn't just about reliving a fairy tale. It's about what happens after, when the real love story begins.